Today we're going to talk about Moon Knight, his origin, his upcoming web series on Disney+, answer why he's been such a cult favorite in the comics for over 40 years, and the big question, is Moon Knight just a Marvel ripoff of Batman? Welcome back to Comic Power. I'm your host, Comic Killer 72. Welcome to another episode of The Quick Flip. This is the program where I go over comic book industry news in a short period of time. Please subscribe to this channel and click on the notification button as well. It will remind you when new videos drop. Alright, let's get right into it. To see what influenced the creation of Moon Knight, let's go back to the 1970s, the era of bell-bottom jeans, funky music, and big hair, afros, or that Farrah Fawcett cut. And in Comic World, the Comics Code Authority, a self-regulating organization in the comics industry intended to make them as bland as possible, loosened up its restrictions against horror and monsters in 1971, and Marvel responded with Morbius, the Living Vampire, who made his debut in Amazing Spider-Man 101 in 1971. It was part of that storyline where Peter briefly grew 4 more arms. Amazing Spider-Man number 100, giving him 8 limbs like a real spider. But back to our story. So Morbius shows up in Amazing Spider-Man 101. It's a big hit, so more monsters come, such as Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider in Marvel Spotlight number 5 from 1972, which is an even bigger hit. And it blazes a trail, pun intended, for Marvel Spotlight number 12 from 1973, giving a showcase to Damon Hellstrom, who first appeared in Ghost Rider number 1. And we can't forget the reintroduction of Dracula in Marvel Comics with Tomb of Dracula number 1, produced in 1972. This title was not as popular as the other horror titles from Marvel, but issue 10 it introduced one of the most popular African American characters of all time in Blade, the Vampire Slayer, which became a very successful live-action movie trilogy starring Wesley Snipes. They also gave an ongoing series to Werewolf by Night, which made its debut in 1972. It never really got that popular. The sales on this title were actually pretty low, but in issue number 32 they introduced the Man of the Hour, Marc Spector, also known as Moon Knight, in 1975. His creation is credited to Doug Monk and Don Perlin. Now let's discuss the origin of the man, the myth, Marc Spector, the Moon Knight. He's supposed to be the son of a rabbi, making him one of the most high-profile Jewish characters in comics. He's a former Marine that winds up becoming a CIA operative, doing field mercenary work. On a mission in the country of Sudan in Africa, he gets into it with his senior officer over that officer's extreme cruelty. He loses the fight and he's left for dead. Near death, he stumbles upon a recently unearthed tomb, which has a statue of the Moon God Konshu, an Egyptian deity. Mark dies, but then he's fully revived and healed by the deity, so he returns to America and decides to become a avenging mercenary and a vigilante who's powered by the Moon God. He is a Moon Knight. So over his 45-year history, Marvel has looked at this character in 2 ways. Is he really powered by a Moon God, or is he just insane? Marvel has played with both ideas, and I think that's a good idea because it really works for the character. It makes him that much more mysterious. It makes for great storytelling. In the latest continuity, Mark is supposed to have dissociative identity disorder, or DID, also known as schizophrenia. So now Marvel has to walk that tightrope in live action, having an engaging story and making sure they're not making fun of people with disabilities such as mental illness. Despite not being very well known outside of comic readers, Moon Knight has a very strong cult following. He's a vigilante that doesn't mind killing bad guys like the Punisher. His origin allows you to cross him over with horror characters like Ghost Rider, Blade, and Morbius. At the same time, he's street level, so you could cross him over with Daredevil and Spider-Man. But if his connection to Konshu is really real, you could cross him over with Doctor Strange with all the mysticism. And as a mercenary turned anti-hero, he predates characters such as Deathstroke and Deadpool, and Elektra and Taskmaster, and so many others. So there's a lot of versatility with the Moon Knight character and what you can do with him, so it explains why he's so popular with some people. The character is sort of like an enigma. He's the king of reboots because when he's not being published, his fans demand that a new title come out. It goes about 30 issues, it gets canceled, and then they restart all over again. So Marvel's best known characters such as Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, the Hulk, all these characters have had an ongoing title that have came out every month for over 50 years, sometimes 60 years. But not Moon Knight. Like I explained, he's the king of reboots, and this is actually pretty funny how many times he's been rebooted. Let's take a look at it. After making his first appearance in Werewolf by Night number 32 and several other appearances throughout the 1970s, he was the star of his first ongoing title in 1980 with Moon Knight number 1. Sales went down, his title was canceled, and then he was rebooted again in 1985 with Moon Knight number 1 once again. And then sales went down and he was rebooted once again in 1992 with Moon Knight number 1. In a special edition issue, he was rebooted again in 1998 with Moon Knight number 1. And sales went down and he was rebooted again with Moon Knight number 1 in 2011. Sales went down, he was rebooted again in 2014 with Moon Knight #1. Sales went down. He was rebooted again in 2016 with Moon Knight #1. Sales went down, and finally he was rebooted once more with Moon Knight #1 in 2021. Whew, that's quite a history, and it's actually pretty funny. Can you think of any character, for the love of God, that's been rebooted more times than Moon Knight? Please tell me if you know of any, because I can't think of anything like this. Now let's take a look at what they're going to do with the character in live action in the Disney Plus web series, which comes out on March 30th, 2022. Well, the first thing is that they got the casting right by hiring Oscar Isaac to play the lead role of Marc Spector. His best known role among comic fans is probably going to be Apocalypse in the X-Men Apocalypse film. I'm not here today to debate that film. It's very flawed, but he did what they asked him to do. And it created a memorable moment in pop culture where the movie got in trouble for the choking scene when he choked out Jennifer Lawrence's character. I think what got Foxes in trouble is that they used this on a billboard. So you had casual people looking at this out of context, but that's another story for another day too. Oscar has been a very good supporting actor in a lot of films for a very long time. He's Poe Dameron in the latest Star Wars trilogy, but one of his best roles is probably in Ex Machina, where he plays a reclusive billionaire tech CEO that has self-aware AI that's extremely lifelike. No spoilers, go see the movie, it's very good. Alicia Vikander is also in it, and she's the wife of the actor that plays Magneto. So there's the connection back to comic book movies. Oscar kind of reminds me of a poor man's version of Daniel Day-Lewis in that he can transform into anything. Here's Daniel Day-Lewis. He's a 3-time Oscar winner. And here he is again in There Will Be Blood. He looks like a completely different person. So it's the same thing with Oscar Isaac. He can transform to anything, and you might not even know that's him. So long story short, Marvel has an acclaimed actor playing the lead, so they got that right, so you're already halfway there. And then on top of that, the trailers have been excellent. They set the tone that this is going to be for horror fans. And the tone's going to be very gritty, so people that like projects like Boba Fett, they're going to love this. And the people that like The Punisher on Netflix, they're also going to show up. And the only comic book movie that's out right now is The Batman, and it's been out about 28 days before this dropped. And it's a web series and not a movie, so there's really nothing in its way. People are going to turn up in big numbers to see Moon Knight, even people that don't know not much about the character, because they trust Marvel's quality. Speaking of Batman, let's answer that original question. Is Moon Knight just a ripoff of the Caped Crusader? And my answer is, he's influenced by Batman, that's obvious, but it's not a ripoff, so to speak. A vigilante who dresses up with a cape going out at night saying he's inspired by vengeance can't be copyrighted to just one character. Batman dresses in black to blend in with the shadows of night. Moon Knight dresses in white and is a reflection like the moon itself. Batman is inspired by the trauma that he experienced at the death of his parents right in front of him after that theater incident. He's a genius and a billionaire, so he has the intellect and he has the funds to bankroll his vigilanteism, and he's smart enough to execute it. Whereas Moon Knight is a former mercenary who may just be crazy and just experiencing schizophrenia, or he may be actually powered by an Egyptian deity. Who knows? So long story short, I think that Moon Knight is inspired by Batman, but he's not a complete ripoff. As for the Moon Knight web series, I don't know about you, but I'll be watching Moon Knight from beginning to end. It debuts on March 30th, 2022. I expect this to be the real jumping off point for Marvel's horror universe, as a setup for Blade, Ghost Rider, and others. Next up is Wicked Wednesday, the new comic book pick of the week. And for March 30th, 2022, the pick of the week is going to be Miskatonic High #1 from Advent Comics. This is a new franchise from an independent publisher, so you have no idea what's going on, so let me explain the whole idea of it. It's a sci-fi action teen horror dramedy. It's influenced by the high school teenage shenanigans of Pretty in Pink, The Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, all those John Hughes movies from the 1980s. It matches it with the sci-fi horror of H.P. Lovecraft and his classic monster stories, especially the ones with tentacles. You gotta have tentacles. So if Buffy the Vampire Slayer is John Hughes meets vampires, then Miskatonic High is John Hughes meets H.P. Lovecraft. This project got its start as a Kickstarter, and now it's going to be available in all of comic stores. The publisher putting this out is Advent Comics, which was founded in 2009. They haven't had any big hits yet, but this could be it. So I'll definitely be picking this up, and I think you should too. The runner-ups include The Shadow War Alpha #1 from DC Comics, where all hell breaks loose after Deathstroke murders Ra's al Ghul. It's a one-shot, self-contained story. Also check out Sensational Wonder Woman #1, also from DC Comics, where she takes on 3 different foes. It too is a one-shot, self-contained comic. Over at Marvel, they're giving us Immortal X-Men #1, which gives us the inner workings of the Quiet Council. These are the big shots that are in control of the mutant island nation of Krakoa. Over at Image, page, we have Astro City. That Was Then, number 1. It's a continuation of this highly acclaimed franchise. And yes, cover A you're looking at right now is by Alex Ross. And for hardcore comic fans, it's number one from Source Point Press. Basically, it's a love letter to comic shop owners, breaking down the comic industry for the last 50 years. You know the drill. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, give it a thumbs up, and share these videos on social media so others learn about the Comic Power channel. And once again, thank you to my subscribers and my viewers who support Comic Power. Until next time, this is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying be sure to catch Moon Knight starring on March 30th on Disney+. I think it's going to be an excellent web series that's going to win Emmys. While you're here, be sure to see my video about how I think that Blade kicked off the MCU with his successful trilogy. Also see my previous video which explains Gore the God Butcher, who will be the villain in Thor Part 4. He's played by Christian Bale, so that's a big deal. Enjoy. This is Comic Power saying bye-bye.